Obligated to me. Hurry up to me. By suffering your onset, I will overcome you. Anything that attacks something solid and unconquerable just hurts itself via its own aggression. The Seneca. When does it occur to you that you are conquered? Does it start when your own nation is taken over by another? Or do you find that you have been conquered when an enemy seizes your house and everything you own? Perhaps the sense of defeat manifests itself when you are imprisoned with your hands and feet bound, or when someone unexpectedly takes away your opportunity to pursue a romantic interest. In terms of how circumstances lead to a sense of being overcome, each person's experience is probably unique. The art of obtaining unconquerability was studied by the ancient Stoics, who had a plethora of knowledge. They believed that unless a person seizes control of their own faculties, outside forces cannot truly conquer them. The only means by which outside influences can affect us is if we voluntarily let them in. We are effectively defeating ourselves by succumbing to something when we sense that it has conquered us. Instead of attempting to conquer the entire world, the goal of unconquerability calls for us to conquer ourselves. The Stoic notion of becoming unconquerable is explored in this video. It is not the things themselves that determine our influence from the outside world, but rather our perception of them. There's a possibility that we'll acquire a desire for something if we give it a high value. Naturally, we experience elation, which is a wonderful emotion when we eventually come across our desires. However, we don't feel fantastic when we can't achieve what we want, and we end up leaving our emotional condition up to the whims of external circumstances. Let's say you have a real attraction to someone at work or school. You'll probably be ecstatic after gathering the nerve to ask them out and pulling off a good date arrangement. You will, however, find yourself let down and probably even angry if this person abruptly cancels the date at the last minute. Even though rejection, flaking, and getting rejected are frequent occurrences in the dating world, people's reactions can differ greatly. While some individuals choose to ignore such incidents and go on with their life, others react by holding grudges or pursuing retribution. If rejection elicits a strong emotional reaction in us, we may conclude that this event has conquered our emotional state, and you cannot be that way. When it comes to insults, they have the same power to influence our emotional health and maybe influence our actions. It's as though the person who offended the other has successfully conquered them if seemingly insignificant slights are enough to foster days of lingering hatred. Beyond simple insults and rejection, there are many more sophisticated ways that others can exert influence over us. One instance of this is blackmail manipulation, wherein the threat of damaging someone's reputation is a frequently used tactic. Many individuals value their reputation highly, thus they could easily succumb to such strategies. The person using blackmail has successfully conquered their target if they succumb to this pressure. Another example is the regular practice of questioning people in the Roman Empire, followed by their imprisonment and even torture. The degree to which a person is tied to this body and the amount of pain he is willing to endure determine how effective these tactics are. Even under such dire circumstances, according to the Stoics, we always have a choice. We have chosen to be conquered by him if we submit to his actions of torture. However, even though the torturer may harm our bodies, if we refuse to give in, he or she cannot prevail over us. We are often unsettled but never defeated, occasionally doubting ourselves but never giving up. We find the Stoic philosopher Epictetus frequently highlighting the unquestionable nature of a person's capacity to choose, which some scholars have translated as moral choice, throughout his enormous collection of lectures from the 2nd century. We have the agency to either retain control over our actions or succumb to the surrounding circumstances, regardless of the circumstances at hand, even in the face of the most terrible crisis. Epictetus uses his response to a fictitious scenario in which he is threatened by a tyrant to demonstrate the strength of this ability. If he said, "I'll put you in chains," I would say, "He's threatening my hands and my feet." I would respond, "He is endangering my neck when he threatened to execute you." I would respond, "He is endangering my entire frail body." If his statement continued, "I will cast you into prison." And my answer does not alter even if he uses the threat of banishment. The tyrant tries to exert power over him, but Epictetus shows in this paragraph that he is unconquerable. Even though the tyrant has the power to imprison him, chop off his head, or shackle his legs. Epictetus claims that these actions are uncontrollable outside influences and have no bearing on him. His actions are what matter, and we alone are capable of determining these. We must be prepared to endure any adversity in order to be unconquerable. We must be ready to set aside completely any opinions that other people may have of us, to give up all we own, including the most basic needs, to endure the captivity and abuse of our bodies, and even to say goodbye to those who are important to us. Every strong bond we hold, whether it's an unbreakable bond we're afraid to break or something we can't endure and won't tolerate, has the capacity to undermine and influence our decisions. Viktor Frankl, a philosopher and psychiatrist who suffered 3 arduous years in prison in several Nazi concentration camps, is a prime example of unconquerability. In Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl describes how, in return for better care and food, Jewish inmates were forced to help prison guards perpetrate horrible crimes against their fellow inmates. Astutely observing, Frankl saw how individuals were ready to succumb to the harsh circumstances and were prepared to go to any lengths to survive, even if it meant betraying or mistreating others. But some people refused to let their circumstances control their morals, and they kept doing good deeds. As a result, despite the Nazis' ability to subject these individuals to imprisonment, torture, malnutrition, and even execution, they were unable to defeat them. According to Seneca, the issue is not hardships in se, but rather our submission ring to them. Hardships cannot affect a Stoic sage because he will not be affected by them. What evil component is there in torture and other things we refer to as hardships? I get the impression that there is evil and that the mind crumbles, sags, and bends. However, the sage is immune to all of these things. Under whatever load, he remains upright. Nothing will defeat him. Nothing irritates him that has to be endured. He does not lament that he was struck by something that can happen to anyone. He is aware of his own power. He is aware that he was meant to be a burden bearer. The ideal state of the Stoic sage is certainly formidable and almost unachievable. Just like with any goal found in the Stoic context, developing a heightened unconquerability requires consistent practice. When the ancient Stoics realized this challenge, they encouraged others and themselves to keep trying to get better. Still, given that our rational powers frequently fail to entirely contain our emotions, upholding unflinching rationality at all times can be difficult. The ancient Stoics saw, very perceptively, that emotional reactions frequently come before our ability to act, even surprising sages for a while. They were able to distinguish between emotions and passions as a result. Our passions, anxiety, fear, lust, and delight are within our influence, according to Stoic philosophy. An ideal Stoic sage is impervious to passions. But since most of us aren't saints, we're bound to have passions, if only occasionally. Thankfully, we retain the capacity to make decisions even when we are consumed by our passions. We still have the ability to choose our subsequent actions, even if we find ourselves face down, overcome by emotion, and to some way conquered. Thus, we could propose that several defense lines can be crossed by outside forces, with our capacity to choose serving as the final bound. This is demonstrated in the movie The Lord of the Rings, where Frodo undertakes the extremely difficult job of bringing the One Ring to Mordor and casting it into the flames of Mount Doom. The One Ring's capacity to create a strong bond with its wearer is where it runs the risk of becoming dangerous. That person who is wearing the ring consequently gets so fixated on it that he will stop at nothing to keep it from falling off. In fact, Frodo becomes enamored with his precious, much like Gollum, who is attempting to take it from him. Now, despite giving in to his attachment at the very end, Frodo managed to carry the ring thousands of miles, overcoming numerous chances to give in. Boromir, among most other characters, would have likely given himself over to the ring far sooner. Again, the power of choice is the only thing that is truly subject to conquering in the philosophy of the Stoics. Everything else is subject to the whims of fate and exists outside of our influence. Our wealth, independence, and status are only a few of the things that can disappear due to unforeseen events succumbing to them. Nonetheless, our ability to form our opinions, to long for, to hold grudges, to accept, to abstain, to speak, or to remain silent persists as an enduring aspect of who we are. when we find ourselves powerless to change the situation. As Viktor Frankl so eloquently put it, we are faced with the challenge of changing ourselves. All of that for now. Verify that you are subscribed, please. We appreciate your time and attention even if you are unable to join us.